children. And it's been used as a wedge and as a way to really pursue this access in some ways we don't even realize all the time. And I remember when I was in college being in a women's studies class, the professor asking everyone in the class, to raise your hand if you factored in having children into your career and educational plan for the next 10 to 20 years. And almost every woman in the class raised her hand, and almost none of the men did. And I was among them. And we see that now also in terms of a lot of the legislation that we're seeing in quote-unquote war against women. A lot of it is geared towards not only restricting abortion access, but also birth control access. On some level, this is all ludicrous, right? Because we don't get pregnant by ourselves. None of us knocked ourselves up. So some men are a part of this, right? And inherently, and yet the impact is solely on women. And in some ways, it's very punitive in terms of restrictive laws, but in other ways, it's happening, in terms of our education and career paths and decisions that we make every day that we're not even realizing. It's just part of our lives. And I think that one of the things that's a struggle, especially for this generation of women, is figuring out how do you have it all. I will say I'm 32 years old, and so I'm at a point in my life where I'm seeing a lot of my friends get married and start to have children, and at the same time, we're all really ambitious type A women, and we want to have fulfilling careers, and we have career goals that are pretty much just as important as family goals. And we very often will sit around at night having cocktails and being like, can we have it all? Is this possible? And for now, the answer that we tell ourselves is that we can have it all. We just can't necessarily have it all at the same time. And I don't know if that's the final answer, but I think that it's important to say that it's okay for it to be hard. But this system is not set up for it to be easy for any of us. And in many ways, it's about consciously making decisions that in the past you just kind of made automatic.
I want to also add that I think one of the things too is that we take kind of the things that women do for granted, and women are conditioned. My wife is very much a feminist herself. Doesn't put up with my shit, stuff like that, right? She shouldn't, right? And so on. Very strong woman. And the other day she came and gave a guest lecture, which is also sociologist in my class. And I put this comment up on Facebook, thanks for doing that, that's very, it's great. And she commented back, thanks for holding the baby for me because we just had a baby, while I gave a lecture. And I said, don't thank me for doing that, because you do that every day while I go to work, and so on. Right now, while we're talking here, she's probably holding the baby this moment, and so on. And a lot of times you'll hear guys when they talk about their own kids, when they're watching their kids, they're babysitting their kids. You don't babysit your own kids, those are your kids.
I remember my husband said, I was like, you're not babysitting, so that's why you go to watch someone else's kids.
Right,
you give me $10 an hour.
Those are your kids, and so on. And we take all that for granted. But then going on also what you were saying too is that why women can't feel safe. Women should be able to dress the way they want without men making the assumption that means they should have sexual access to them. But the problem is that we objectify women, treat them as literal objects, and men feel that they have a right to no matter what. You have a right to touch you, say what we want, and it doesn't matter how we feel about that, how you feel about that, because it's all about us, and so on. So that's another thing that it doesn't. That's why I like Denim Day much better than I like Walking Miles and Shoes. The message of Denim Day is it really doesn't matter how much you have to drink, what you wore, and so on and everything else. No one has the right to have access to your body, regardless, including if you decide to see things.
I think I have a question about the term equality, because all we're talking is about equal rights and equal progress and men have human have rights. So since the society has not been patriarchal, so all these institutional values are actually based on this idea of men are empowered, or in idea of patriarchal, right? So when we talk about equality of women and men, and once everything that men have for women, don't we actually reinforcing this old system, system of values? So what do you think of, even the idea of equality is kind of a man thing. They want to overcome the other person. don't you think we actually reinforcing this idea of patriarchal when we demand equality for women and men?
Well, it doesn't mean to be overcoming. I think you were talking about equality of opportunity. Women still make 70 cents on the dollar to men, and I'm hoping that you can talk about some of the laws that are being passed now that are actually creating even more inequality. Like you talked about giving birth. Giving birth is a huge, huge issue. If we are forced to give birth, if we are forced against our will to give birth, then we can never, ever be equal. We don't have that choice. Or if we're not hired because we have the ability to give birth, or if we don't get a promotion because of the fear that we might give birth, or because we're mothers. I told the story in my class about how when I was hired here last year, and they asked me what do I like to do in my spare time, and I just had a baby a year ago. And I started out by talking about gardening because I was so afraid that I know it's a college, I know it's all hippies and flowers, but I still thought, you know what? They're making a business decision. There's a million professors out there. They're going to say, look, she just had a baby. How's she going to teach 5 classes? How's she going to be an advisor to a club, and do all kinds of other things? But I was in the middle of talking about gardening, and I said, you know what? I'm lying to you. I just had a baby. I know you're not going to hire me. I understand. I'm sorry. I just had, and they went, it's great. No, we all have babies, and they did hire me. But that's a fear. I mean, that's a normal job. You don't want to say I just had a baby because they assume you're not going to be able to do anything. So anyway, I'll let that.
Just on quickly on the reverse side, if you're a man and you just had a baby, they think that means stability.
Stability, right. You need more money. You need a raise because you've had a baby. Right?
Actually, when I interviewed at Pierce College, I'm still an adjunct. When I interviewed at Pierce College, I brought my son with me, a brand new newborn baby. My wife at the time and my son were right outside. And so the people that interviewed, those that interviewed me actually got a chance to meet my son. So I didn't have that fear at all. In fact, I didn't even conceive of that to be a fear. I had no reason to think that would be a problem. Right? You know, and I actually get offended as well with what Jay was talking about. You know, when people often say things like, you know, child care is a woman's issue. Really? I'm a dad. He's my issue. Right? He is my issue. He is my son. I have to raise him to be whoever it is he's going to be. You know, teacher Nobel Prize winner. Right outside of it. Right, and so I actually get offended all the time when people say things like, you know, well, why don't you just have, you know, mom watch it? Because that's my job. And it's not even that I could do that, because I absolutely could. But why is it that I wouldn't want to watch myself? That's more of a problem. And this comes out of the gender rules, right? That because of certain sexual characteristics you have, you're supposed to act in certain ways, you're supposed to believe certain things. But no, I am a parent, right? I mean, I'm a male, so you guys call me a father, but I don't give a damn about that. I'm a parent, and I'm responsible for that child, period, right?
Like, my dad actually teaches there. My dad's in the, my dad. But, like, growing up, my dad always liked to spend time with me and my sister, you know. I remember, like, some of my family members who are, like, way more, like, I have a very traditional, like, Mexican, born-again Christian family. And a lot of my uncles are very, like, far removed from my other cousins. Like, they don't show emotion ever. They just kind of sit and, like, drink beer and, like, watch Lakers games during holidays. And so my dad would always be the one that would, like, I don't know, hang out with me and my sister. And I remember my uncles and, like, even some of my friends are like, why is your dad, like, they weren't used to, like, my dad kind of acting like a, well, not like, you're not acting like mom, Dad, but, like, you know, actually investing time in mine and my sister's lives, because that's so rare for fathers because of how we expect them to act. Yeah.
So, I'm assuming we all agree about what Simone de Beauvoir said, that one is not born a woman but becomes one.
I generally accept that. Right? I mean, I accept the idea that our identity, our self-I, is a social construction or a conglomerate of social construction, whether it's gender, race, class, whatever. right? I don't even have a speech in Tuesdays. But, right?
Hey, man, why you throwing out like that?
Because you always say that.
Go there, man.
Try not to. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So anyways, we are a conglomerate of these, of the social identities and social constructions. So I think that what it means to be a man is just to be a woman.
We should open it to, have a discussion instead of just us. Yeah.
I think people sort of also get a bit complacent as well. Like, there's been a lot of strides for race, gender, and a lot of other things, but I think people a lot of the time fall into misconception that because things are better, that means that they're good. I think a lot of people kind of fall into that trap. But, because some people say,
Things have changed since
racism doesn't exist anymore. Civil rights movement.
we don't have president, we don't have racism.
Yeah, and a lot of people honestly believe that, and I feel that's a lot of, And, even with class, when I was watching, a Daily Show, Fox News, is that, look at all these poor people, they have so much more stuff than the people in the third world. And I'm like, just because it's better does not mean it's good, And a lot of people on that crowd.
I've heard a common argument against feminism is where you seriously have your rights already, you have the right to vote. So why are you bitching now? Just because yes, I can vote doesn't mean that things are equal. I still think that being 77 cents to the dollar, 1 in 4 college-age women are sexually assaulted in this country. Every 33 seconds in this country, a woman is killed by her partner. Things aren't equal. Just because I can vote, because I have legal access to certain reproductive rights doesn't mean that things are equal at all. They're not. People are communicating.
This might be a good transition for you to talk about some of the ways in which we are currently not equal.
Well, and I think that, so this is where I think class comes into a lot, is that, very often kind of the political conversation is controlled or almost influenced by people who are kind of haves in society. I think, especially when I think about the history of women's access to abortion and birth control, there's always been a very stark divide between access for wealthier women and access for poor women. And, I think about, pre-1973, pre-Roe, of course, before abortion was legal in this country, it was always difficult for women to get abortions, but women who had more resources could find doctors who would arrive procedures safely, they could travel around the country, and increasingly we're seeing that even here in this country today. Those of you who I've met before, you may have heard me talk about last fall, I went to Mississippi for some time. At the time, there was one abortion provider in the state of Mississippi. There's currently no abortion provider in the state of Mississippi. And in the state of Mississippi, women who are lower income, who do not get time off of work, their abortion options are limited to non-existent. Women in Mississippi who have some resources can easily travel across state lines and access the procedure safely. And that's not a unique experience in Mississippi. In the state of Alabama, I think there's a total of 3 abortion providers. If you think about the South and very much the Midwest, there is access in terms of being able to afford a procedure, being able to afford time off of work. The states where they have waiting periods of 24 hours, whereas 48 hours you can see a woman have to travel, maybe 5 hours to drive to the nearest abortion provider, go through some scripted spiel from her doctor, leave, come back again, and drive back 48 hours later for a procedure that is supposed to be safe and legal and accessible, but in reality, depending on where you fall on the socioeconomic scale, that's not the case. And we even see that today in California. In California, we have seen the budget crisis, the state budget crisis, programs that support lower income women and families slashed dramatically. And so what that means is very often for women who have private insurance, insurance coverage, money, birth control is very affordable to them. That's not an issue. And yet for many women who are young, who are unsure, a birth control can cost them $50 a month. And I think that many of us can realize that that is not feasible for many people. So it's important to think about how the economics of these issues very much impact women. Currently, legislatures. Just this year alone, there's over 500 bills introduced already this year in Congress and state legislatures that would limit women's access to birth control and abortion. Some of them
Can you
are.
tell them some of them, like
Yeah.
the forced rape, the government rape?
So there's some that have gotten a lot of publicity, like in the state of Virginia, where there was a mandate proposed that women would have to have a transvaginal ultrasound before being able to access abortion services. And I know what that is. It's basically compared to state sanctioned rape, because if you're having an ultrasound probe inserted in your vagina, there's no medical reason that is necessary for the procedure, but because they want to shame you and stigmatize you and make you feel really, really bad, there's really nothing more violating than that. In other states, it has been cutting off funding for Planned Parenthood. There's now, in Ohio, there's 9 states that have slashed funding for Planned Parenthood, which basically means that the lower income and uninsured women who rely on us for basic care like pap smears and other cancer screenings, contraception, STD testing and treatment, they have nowhere to go for those preventive care services. So I think that across the country, these are taking very many forms. Quite honestly, none of them were that new. The war on women, it's become it's a big political topic right now, but in reality, this is nothing that's that different from last year or the year before that. It's a little bit amped up. It's getting more media attention, but otherwise, it's the same. It's an election year. That's about the only difference. But these attacks were constant, so it sets up a situation where women are having to constantly advocate to fight for services that we all rely on. 99% of women in this country were sexually active use birth, and yet we're still having to fight for access to birth control. The Notre Dame and the Archdiocese of Washington, New York, yesterday formed a lawsuit so that institutions affiliated with religions like hospital corporations, universities wouldn't have to cover birth control in the way they do other preventive care prescriptions. This is just kind of ludicrous because it's 2012 and birth control has been legal in this country for more than 50 years, and we're still having to defend that.
I have a kind of a controversial question that I'd like to ask the panel and maybe the audience if you wanted to chime in. Can you be a feminist and also, what am I speaking feminist, and be anti-abortion? So I had a student in my class who said she considers herself a feminist, but she's anti-abortion. Remember, she never did that.
Oh yeah.
She left.
She left on the first time.
Is it possible though? I mean, what if you're religious and you believe life begins with conception? Can you also be a feminist? I don't have to.
No. I consider myself a feminist, and I do vote pro-choice, but when it comes to me, I don't think I ever could have an abortion. Like, everything about it scares me. Most of the surgery scares me.
But you wouldn't stop other women from having it? No. Could you say that you think abortion should be illegal, though? That you think it's murder? Well, I mean, in fact, totally murder. But can you say abortion is murder and also be a feminist at the same time? Can a religious Catholic be a philosophical question? I mean, can a religious Catholic also be a feminist? Yeah.
Probably not. I have to say highly not likely unless I'm wrong. Because usually our belief system kind of, ingrains limits and choices that, we tend to follow instead of think for ourselves of stuff. Another example of that is someone who's religious might just only view the binary as, disconnected male-female, but or sexuality by saying it's either you're straight or you're gay, or lesbian, or just separating them. Their belief system is not teaching them that there's a spectrum to look at, that bisexuality is real. But their belief system goes against that and just thinking that it's, so I think it's very hard to say that you're in this, position of saying that you're equal rights, but then the belief system is going way against that.
You had something to say?
I was just going to say that the two different types of beliefs are very different in terms of age. Religion is usually very old, So it's old-fashioned, and all the thoughts, all the things that you're taught are out of old scriptures. They may have been revised, but they're all old. They're all old-fashioned. Feminism is new. It's something. It's progressive, and you will always have a disconnect between old and new. It's the same way where you have people who, everybody in here is gonna act wild possibly, and then when they become older, they're like, those damn young kids, they're always doing this and blasting their rap, But it's the same thing with feminism and with religion. Religion is very old-fashioned. All the material is old. All of the material is from a time in which men were, the formidable superior force, whatever. And so you're not going to have the ability to have a connect unless there's some religious leader that decides to try and make a movement towards, bridging that gap. So, like, for instance, religion has bridged the gap with science in some places, like Catholic. But I mean, as far as with feminism, it's probably going to be some time before they start seeing it as a choice, because, like you said, it's killing something. So.
I was going to say, mostly men are raising their hands.